Why do people in Asia use chopsticks? Created roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years ago in China, the earliest versions of something like chopsticks were used for cooking. They're perfect for reaching into pots full of hot water or oil, and were most likely made from twigs. While it's difficult to nail down a firm date, it would seem it wasn't until around 500–400 AD that they began being used as table utensils. One factor that contributed to the switch was a population boom across the country. Consequently, resources, particularly for cooking, became incredibly scarce. As a result, people began cutting their food into tiny pieces so it would cook faster. The bite-sized morsels rendered table knives obsolete, as there was very little left to cut. However, they were now perfect for eating with chopsticks, which were also made from cheap materials and easily made. Thus, a trend was born. The table knife's decline in popularity in these regions at this time can also be attributed to the teachings of Confucius, who was a vegetarian. He believed that knives weren't appropriate to eat with. As Confucius supposedly said, "The honorable and upright man keeps well away from both the slaughterhouse and the kitchen," and he allows no knives on his table. It was due to this that it's believed that Chinese chopsticks are traditionally blunt at the tip and thus somewhat poor choices to try to spear food as you would with a fork. Within about a century of this, chopsticks had migrated to other Asian countries, such as Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. One distinct difference between Japanese and Chinese chopsticks was that the former were made from a single piece of bamboo that were joined at the base. In addition, Japanese chopsticks were originally used solely for religious ceremonies. Regardless of their differences, chopsticks remained popular in both countries and are still the primary utensil of choice. While the early chopsticks were more often than not made of some cheap material, such as bamboo, later silver chopsticks were sometimes used during Chinese dynastic times in order to prevent food poisoning. How? It was believed that silver utensils would turn black if they came into contact with any life-threatening toxins. Unfortunately for those engaging in this practice, silver doesn't turn black when it touches the likes of cyanide or arsenic, among other poisons. However, it most definitely can change color if touched by garlic, onion or rotten eggs, all of which release hydrogen sulfide which reacts with the silver causing it to change color. As food became bite-sized, knives became more or less obsolete. Their decline, and chopsticks' ascent, also came courtesy of Confucius. As a vegetarian, he believed that sharp utensils at the dinner table would remind eaters of the slaughterhouse. He also thought that knives' sharp points evoked violence and warfare, killing the happy, contented mood that should reign during meals. Thanks in part to his teachings, chopstick use quickly became widespread throughout Asia. Different cultures adopted different chopstick styles. Perhaps in a nod to Confucius, Chinese chopsticks featured a blunt rather than pointed end. In Japan, chopsticks were 8 inches long for men and 7 inches long for women. In 1878, the Japanese became the first to create the now ubiquitous disposable set, typically made of bamboo or wood. Wealthy diners could eat with ivory, jade, coral, brass or agate versions, while the most privileged used silver sets. It's also really comfortable to use them whilst cooking. According to my own experience, when you have stayed in an Asian country long enough and have become a very skilled chopstick eater, back home you will keep using them quite a lot. Things to avoid with chopsticks: there are some taboos when using chopsticks, so to avoid embarrassment when staying at a homestay in China, avoid these. Do not stick chopsticks in your food. Halfway through your meal and need a break, do not stab the food with your chopsticks. Why? At funerals, chopsticks are commonly stuck in rice, so by doing this, you are mimicking a dark day. Do not point your chopsticks. This one goes without saying, really. Pointing at people is generally considered a tad rude, but pointing your chopsticks, yeah, not so wise. Do not stir food with chopsticks. This applies to communal things like hot pot, for example. Stirring the bowl with your chopsticks is considered rude and unhygienic. Do not tap the table with your chopsticks. Similar to a knife and fork. In China, this is considered a sign of begging. So today we answered the question, why do people in Asia use chopsticks? I hope that today's video is useful and interesting for you. Bye-bye.